Okay, we're going to talk about machining processes, and this is where we're removing some of the material from the part that we already created and shaped in the last videos. And again, I've made you some pictures so that you can get some pictures in your notebook to go along with these, but be sure you're writing down the notes as well. And what kind of process it is depends on the cutting implement that we're using and which direction the piece and the cutting implement is moving. Our first one is turning processes, and in the turning process, the piece itself is what is spinning. The tool is basically holding still or moving linear. And this is a really good example of showing what's happening. We have a wedge here that's being pushed up against the material. As this spins, the wedge cuts off small slivers, little chips, that are coming by. There are a number of different turning processes, and I gave you this picture as well that shows a number of them. Lathes are used for it. That's where it's actually the lathe turns the piece. And then we have different pieces. We have straight, taper where it's at an angle. It could be something that's form turning where it's shaping it into this specific shape. This is how you can put threads on, etc. Our second kind is a milling process. This is where the operation creates a flat or curved surface, removing materials. So here this piece and the machine are moving differently. Sometimes this part is staying the same and this part's moving, and sometimes it's the other way. This time the tool is the one rotating. These are some different examples, and you notice these are not drills. This is where this piece is being drug along the surface. This is spinning, but it's being drug along the surface to make a long groove. You can have ones that are curved on the bottom, called ball, ones that make nice square bottoms, ones that are round there, ones that have T-shapes, all different shapes. Here's a list. Then we have drilling processes. In this case, the drill is spinning, but it just goes straight into the material, straight out to create holes. And we have different shapes of drills. Drill. We can bore, counter bore, countersink. Remember we talked about all of these back in IED when we were doing holes for Inventor. The next one is shearing process. And remember when we did Mechanical Advantage, we had a problem that had shearing in it, and this is what it looks like. We've got a punch at the top that has a slight wedge shape here, and then we've got a flat piece of metal. And then there's a little bitty gap between where this is coming down and where the bottom part sits there. This is in fact the same process that works with scissors. In scissors, both sides can move, but here we're talking about metal, so just the top part is coming down. And we're basically cutting away part of the material that we no longer want. There are different kinds, and here's a list of a bunch of different kinds, but I'll show you a couple of examples. A punch specifically has some shape, and it's pushed down, and it actually cuts on two sides, or usually a whole shape coming out. Like here's a punch of a diamond coming out. In this case, a punch, the part on the inside is what we don't want, and we're removing that, and the part on the outside is what we do want. This is basically the exact opposite of like blanking, where the shape that we're cutting out, we want this one, and that's the scrap parts. As you might imagine in these kinds, once we've got our scrap parts, they can then go back into the process, be remelted down to be cast again like we started with. We also have abrasive machining processes, and this includes a lot of different kinds. Everything from sandpaper, where we're just sanding the material down, grinding wheels, wire wheels where we can take off large material, and then processes. This media blaster is where we actually have little tiny bits of abrasive being pushed with compressed air down to cut away at the surface. There's also a couple of other processes that we can use that are not mechanical. In these cases, it's not a mechanical one piece of machinery pushing on another, but we're using either thermal or chemical. We could also use electrical discharges, flames, lasers, plasma cutters, water cutting, etc. And basically, if you notice this list, this is all the things we just talked about. We can also produce all of these with chemical or thermal processes. We also have a process called heat treating, where we're changing the properties of the material, strengthen it, toughen it, etc. by heating it up and cooling it and controlling the process that we do it with. Most of the time, if we're talking about heat treating, we're talking about steel or other ferrous metals. That means metals that can contain iron. Sometimes the reason we do the heat treating is, for instance, we might want to, partway through the process, make the material weaker but very ductile so that we can pull it or we can extrude it. And then once we've got it in the shape we want, then we reheat treat it to make it high strength again.